I'll give one tip. I'll leave a technique for everybody of a way to just slow down, even just for 1 minute. It doesn't have to take very long. That's what I want to leave everyone with is that you don't have to swing the pendulum all the way one way or the other. So it doesn't have to be, I get everything done or I get nothing done. And often that's what we think in our societies. That's what we're taught is either you're do all the things, hustle culture, or you do nothing and you rest and you're lazy because that's a lot of judgment on ourselves. And so even if you just take 1 minute to breathe, just take a few mindful breaths and just check in with yourself.
I'm your host, Tiffany Gilliland, an Australian business and mindset coach with 10 years' experience in online marketing and the creator of the Business Bravery framework. I help coaches to be brave so you can sign more clients even if you hate marketing and sales feel icky. From signing your next paying clients through to launching that dream group coaching program, the Business Bravery framework helps you take bigger leaps without the mindset spirals. It's helped my clients double their investment in me, make thousands of dollars, and truly build their dream business. In this episode, I had the pleasure of chatting with Dr. Jodie Solberg, who is a certified master hypnotherapist, transpersonal wellness coach, transformational speaker, and international best-selling author, holding a doctorate in counseling. With over 2 decades of experience as both a therapist and coach and an educational background in both social and clinical psychology, Jodie founded Psyched Up Success in 2019 to integrate her expertise and support clients of all ages and stages in their healing journey. Her work focuses on helping her clients heal from trauma and anxiety, embrace neurodiversity, remove mental blocks to success, gain clarity and confidence, creating inner peace and work-life harmony, preventing burnout, and achieving their personal and professional goals while prioritizing self-care and self-compassion. As a certified hypnobirthing educator, prenatal bonding facilitator, and Goulding sleep talk method consultant, Jodie is passionate about helping women feel empowered to have positive birth and parenting experiences while fostering secure attachment, building healthy relationships, and cultivating lasting personal confidence and self-esteem. Jodie's greatest joy and purpose is guiding women to connect with their inner wisdom, finding their unique identity and voice, and to create a life they love with tools and resources they can pass on to the next generation. In this episode, Jodie shares how coaches can avoid burnout and grow a sustainable online business by prioritizing self-care, setting boundaries, and embracing an anti-hustle approach. We also explore her brave business pivots, including her work in emotional empowerment and pre-perinatal psychology. With that said, this is an amazing episode, and I can't wait to share with you Jodie's stories of business bravery, past, present, and future. Now, who's ready for some business bravery inspiration? Let's dive in. Hello everyone. I am super excited to be here today with my amazing guest, Jodie Solberg, and I'm super excited to dive into all of the brave things that she has going on in her business. And yeah, we were having a few chats before we got started, and there's some things I can't wait to dive into. Jodie, thank you so much for joining me and taking the time and to share your stories of business bravery with us. And yeah, just tell us a bit more about who you help and how you help people and all of that good stuff.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. I'm so glad to be here. And hello, everyone. My name is Jodie Solberg, and I have been in the mental and behavioral health world as well as coaching for about 25 years now. And I help women, specifically women in business who have busy, full lives, who have all the roles and the responsibilities. You know, we're not just businesses in a bubble. We have all the people that we're responsible for and to as well. So people like partners, kids, parents, pets, or all of the above. And a lot of times my clients are people who are feeling really overwhelmed with all of that. They're losing themselves, their identity, and who they are, and they're feeling spread way too thin and getting really burnt out. You know, they have some past trauma that they're dealing with and the expectations of just life and all of those roles, and are trying to figure out how to balance it all just right. And that in and of itself is a lot of pressure and expectation. So what I do is I help them to release that, and I help them to figure out how to harmonize all of those pieces of their lives, help them to heal from within, from those effects of the trauma and the anxiety and the burnout, and to really be able to do that in a way that works best for them. Because all of us have different ways and different methods that are going to work the best for us. Our brains work is differently, our energy is different, our bodies are different, and a lot of those things live in the subconscious. And so I'm a hypnotherapist, a certified master hypnotherapist. I also do somatic techniques for trauma release from the body and from the subconscious. And so I do a whole person type of approach to help people to learn how to regulate and have more sustainable success all the way around so that they can be more productive in their businesses when they take care of themselves first. And they can show up for everyone and everything else at their best versus working themselves into the ground, which I know is something that I personally did in the past as well and have overcome and big changes in order to have more of that sustainable success for me. And so I love to pass that on to other women.
Mm. Oh my gosh, that phrase that you just said, that whole working yourself into the ground. Like, I was just having a conversation this week with another entrepreneur, and we both have like chronic health stuff that we manage around our business. And I sort of asked her, and I was like, "Oh, how do you manage things when you're having a bad day and that kind of thing?" And yeah, she said to me, "Oh, look, I'm not a shining example. I just push through because that's how I was taught." And for me, I'm like, yeah, that doesn't work for me anymore. I can't keep doing that. And so, yeah, it's just interesting that phrase that you said. And like, I'd be interested in your perspective on that kind of thing of just that whole. I think there's a lot of messages of like, just hustle harder, just push forward, just keep doing more.
Yeah.
And it's not sustainable. I mean, for most of us, I think. I mean, I'd love to know your
Mm-mm.
perspective.
Yeah, definitely not sustainable for me. That was one of the big breakthroughs and changes that I needed to make was when I recognized what was happening. I was in this big cycle and it would be years in between, honestly. But I was in this cycle of burning out over and over and over again. But what would happen is I would do exactly what you're talking about, and I'd push through and I'd work harder. And I had this belief, this underlying and a belief that was holding me back from taking care of myself because it was saying that I had to work really, really hard to be successful. And that came from when I was growing up.
Mm,
I can pinpoint where that came from, that was something that was really respected in my family and just in my culture growing up, where you worked really hard and you made money and you were successful and that was respected. But I don't build things with my hands. I work with people. And so for me, what did that mean? I had to translate that into long hours, adding all the things to my plate, really hustling, like you were saying, and pushing through. It's like you push through the pain, you keep going and you do it anyway, and you do all the things. And I was doing that until literally my body was shutting me down.
mm,
And so I had to make some big changes to the point where now I can recognize that feeling of pushing through. And that's a big red flag for me to not
mm,
keep doing what I'm doing. If I have that feeling of pushing through, it means that I need to hit the pause button and I need to reset before my body shuts me down and I can't take care of anyone or anything else because I pushed myself too hard. So,
mm.
yeah, I can't do that either. It's not sustainable for me to just say, well, I'm just gonna, push, push, push and do all of the time.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Oh, I'm so grateful to hear that message from somewhere else. Like, I feel like the other messages, and maybe because of my own upbringing and beliefs and things, it was easier to listen to those. Oh, work harder. If you want something, you've got to work hard. And yeah, so it's good to hear that. And definitely my own experiences, I found those times of between burnout got shorter and shorter, and like the push through
Yeah.
my body would just stop things sooner and sooner and just be like, no, not anymore.
Hmm.
And yeah, and then you've got to
Yeah.
take a
You
week
hit the
off or yeah,
wall.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And that's what happened to me. That was for me. I had that real, that's what was going on. I actually had a really bad car accident,
Mm,
literally got hit by a truck in traffic, not good. And I wasn't healing the way I should have been able to. I had hit a that where I'd been doing all things. I'd been going to physical therapy and chiropractor and massage and all the things they were telling me to do. And I just hit this point where I wasn't getting better after that. And basically was still doing what I was doing before that accident, which was trying to load on all the things and work all the long hours and push through all the time. And so I had to reevaluate because getting better. And with what I do, had to be something going on under the surface. I'm like, if they're saying my body should be healing and I'm sick all the time, what's happening? And so I dug deeper and looked more into that
mm,
and really reevaluated how I was living my life and uncovered those limiting beliefs and worked through that and realized that in order to have that sustainable success, because it didn't matter how much I was making, the more I made, I actually thought I had to work even harder to justify making that, and so I needed to flip the script on its ear, turn it around and say, okay, well, I actually am going to be able to be more successful, help more people is my best if I take care of myself first. So I really had to completely change those doing things. And that's actually where my business as it is now, which is called Psyched Up Success, that's my private
mm,
practice that I do now. That's how that was born is I literally sat down for that week. We're into the new year now, and the week between Christmas and New Year's is kind of a reevaluation time, right? We're thinking about what have we been doing and what do we want to do differently? And I sat down and made a whole new plan. And so that was 2017 going into 2018. I said, okay, I can't do it this way anymore because I was looking and I was seeing, like you said, these cycles of burnout that were going back a really long way. But like you said, the windows were getting shorter and shorter in between.
mm.
And our bodies speak to us. Our minds and our bodies are so connected. And our subconscious controls all of those bodily processes and symptoms. And it will speak to us and tell us if we need to slow down. And if we keep overriding and we keep ignoring it, then those symptoms will get bigger and bigger and bigger until we can't do anything and take care of anything except for ourselves. And that's the point that I was at. And so that's unfortunate that I had to get to that point. Some of us listen to the little taps. I always say, some of us need the frying pan to the head before we can really truly listen. But now I've taught myself to listen to the little taps, and that's what I help other people with too, is okay, let's be aware of this before it gets that bad.
Yeah.
As soon as you start to feel that stress or that feeling of pushing through, then do something about it before you get the flare up of the chronic pain or health condition, or before it creates something new that's going
Yeah.
to take you out. Yeah.
Mm, yeah. Oh, okay. That's such a great analogy. The little taps versus the frying pan to the
Yeah, you would think about the old school cartoons, right?
yeah.
With the frying pan. Uh-huh. Yeah, that's what I picture in my mind. I'm like, apparently that's what it took. But I did listen, and I'm so grateful that I did. And actually, took a big step to make a big change in my life.
Wow. Okay, there is so much that I want to ask you on that. However, I'm conscious that there's questions on bravery that I want to ask as well. So hopefully if we get a chance we'll come back. If not, well then another day. However, just I'd love to know what brave things are you working on in your business at the moment?
Okay. Well, when we're talking about bravery, that's definitely, I feel like that was a big brave step to make some
Yeah,
bold changes for sure. And we'll circle back.
yeah.
But now I feel like, sometimes they're big things and sometimes it's little things, right? those small little bits of stretching the comfort zone or trying something new or, reinventing something. And so, in 2024, one of the things that I decided to do was I wanted to do a deeper dive into more prevention and early intervention. I mentioned a lot of work around trauma and anxiety with women. And what I found was over the years, I was helping a lot of women who were saying, you helped me so much. Now can you help me help my kids? I want to break these generational cycles and I don't want to pass these things on. And actually, that's how I got my start in my therapy career, many, many years ago, really helping parents and kids. And so I had that expertise and I had that background. But, I stepped out this last year and I said, I want to explore this further. And so I actually decided to do a deeper dive into what's called pre and perinatal psychology, which is how do all these beliefs that we're talking about and how do all of these things influence us and affect us from a really young age, right? All the way from the womb and beyond. And so, how do we form all of those limiting beliefs? And, what is modeled for us when we're little? Because working, in my past life of my career, I'd be working with, 3, 4, 5, 6 year olds and dealing with the same types of attachment issues or those limiting beliefs and self-worth issues, believe it or not, that young. And then I would work with people, women that were in their 40s, 50s, 60s, who are still dealing with the same things. And so I wanted to help to make a difference on a fundamental level. And I was never taught in school 20 plus years ago that we could prevent trauma, that we could prevent these attachment issues, that we do these things. It just was mind blowing to me. So I ended up stepping out and doing something brave and actually traveling abroad and studying in Germany with a German psychiatrist who is at the forefront of these things and really started a new offshoot of my business and a new chapter of that to help people in with pregnancy. I teach hypnobirthing now and prenatal bonding. So I'm helping women as well, but I'm also helping them to mold and shape that next generation. And I also got certified in the last couple years in modality for helping empower parents of kids that are already born. So the ones that are, all the way up from babies to 18 years to help empower. And that's really what I wanted to do. I wanted to show women that they could make a big difference, that they could do their own personal work, but then how to pass those on. Because often people know what they don't want to do, but they're not sure what to do instead. And so helping them to, heal themselves and their own inner child, but then also to be able to pass that on to the new generation and, their kids. And it's never too late, whether they're here or not, there's so much that we can do. So that was a big step. And so that's continuing this year. That's currently, I'm still in the process of working on that piece of my business and what I'm doing. And I'm really loving it. And then the other thing that I'm doing right now, which I'm excited about, is I'm revamping an emotional empowerment course for women brought out in 2019, right in their very first course that I created. And it was actually really successful. I had a lot of people go through it who absolutely loved it, but it's been sitting on the shelf. I never moved it over into the new platform. It was my very first course. It was the first videos that I ever recorded. And I have to say that was really brave because if you had known me 25 years ago, I was terrified of video cameras and speaking in public. And now I do it all the time. So I'm so much more confident and comfortable with cameras now. But it was my very first course and I recorded it and it had great content in it, but I wanted to freshen it up. And so that's the other thing I'm in the process of right now. So I'm finishing all of those certifications from the doing in Germany. And I'm also revamping this course because I want people to know how to reconnect with themselves, how to set boundaries, how to use their voice and find their voice, and really be able to trust themselves and their intuition and be able to have those healthier relationships with themselves and others. But then again, model that and pass that on. More legacy work for me. It's something that's going to live on long beyond me of helping people to really feel strong in themselves and in their decisions and in those relationships, and then break those cycles. So that breaking generational cycle piece, and I'm right in the trenches of it right now.
Coaches, if you're feeling frustrated that you're doing all the things but still not signing clients, this is for you. You're a new coach, you know coaching can change lives, and you're ready to sign your first two or more high ticket paying clients already, but it's just not happening. You're posting content, you're showing up, but your inbox is crickets, while your coach friends seem to be signing clients left and right with ease. You're starting to wonder, is it my offer, my niche, or maybe is it just me? Well, let me tell you, it's not just you. And you don't need another freebie or some vague advice that's not going to work for you. You need a clear, repeatable strategy and support that gets you focused on the right tasks. That's exactly what we do inside the Brave Coach Breakthrough, my 3-month one-on-one coaching program for new coaches who are ready to finally sign their first two or more high-ticket clients. We blend practical marketing foundations with the mindset work that actually gets results, because I know what it's like to think, who am I to be a coach? Can I really charge that much? I don't want to be too salesy. And my clients, they've been there too, and I've helped them move through it. Like my client M, who signed her first 2 clients in 60 days without a big launch. Another client D, who booked her first discovery call within 3 weeks of working with me and signed her first paying client a few weeks later. Or Tracy and Jess, who launched their first group program, signed their first 4 clients, and doubled their investment in me. You can do this too with the right support. We'll build your signature coaching package, clarify your message, the exact words you want to be using, and create a client signing strategy that feels like you, feels like the right fit for your personality. The whole program is designed to double your investment and make sure you have repeatable systems to keep signing clients well into the future. I have 4 spots open at the time of recording, but these will go fast. Book your free strategy call at tiffanyGstudios.com, Tiffany, G for golf, Studios.com, or find me over on Instagram at Tiffany G Studios, exact same spelling, no spaces, no underscores, and DM me the word breakthrough or just say, hi, I heard you on the podcast. You can be the coach who gets paid to change lives. Let's make it happen. Oh my gosh, there's easily 10 questions I want to ask you right now. I'm going to pick one.
Okay.
That so you said in there that it's possible to prevent trauma. I was wondering
Um,
if, yeah, I don't know if you think
mhm.
this is a good way to go, but I'm so curious on that. I mean, like, definitely when you were talking about that for like, children discovering that. I mean, when I was a child, the word trauma didn't even exist. There was just, buck up and get through it. Like, I was an 80s
Uh-huh.
child,
Me
right? So
too.
it was just like, okay.
Yeah. It was
So
like, figure it out, get up, you're fine, go outside.
yeah, yeah, and in fact,
Yeah.
my parents, especially with that generational trauma, my parents were like, "I had it tougher than you. We were beaten every
Yep.
day and everything." It's just like, okay,
Oh yeah. They compared. Yeah, they compared and said, there's nothing wrong with you. What are you
yeah,
crying about? Or they'll
yeah,
say something like, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. Yeah, that's where we
yeah,
came from with that type of generation. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. So yeah,
Yeah.
how does it work with then preventing trauma? I know that's like it's a tough thing to talk about, I guess. Like it's not exactly happy-go-lucky, but I'm just very curious, like how does one
Mhm.
prevent? Like, and I've heard so much about unworking it and unwinding it and letting it go and all that stuff. How does that go?
That's where I was living for years as a trauma focused therapist
Mm.
for so long. Like I said, that wasn't ever even a question when I was in school because that was a long time ago, and there have been huge advances in and perinatal psychology field of
Yeah.
how are we formed, how do our brains work, and how do we get those first programs and imprints and what affects us, because they used to think that when we were born we just had a blank slate, and
Mm.
now they're figuring out that that's not the case. They actually used to think that until you had conscious memories, like verbal memories that you could recite back, so around 3, that nothing affected you. And that
Mm.
is absolutely not true. Like,
Yeah.
not at all, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they were like, they're just like little robots or something, right? There's nothing happening. And now we know that we're like little subconscious sponges when we're kids. And so, all the way from when we're, inside our mother's womb to when we're first born, all the way till we're about 6 or 7, we're just taking it all in. We're absorbing absolutely everything. And so, how I got into more of that prevention and early intervention side is because that's what kept happening is I would have these women come to me and they had a lot of course, other types of traumas like abuse or things like that. And we're unraveling those, but there was a lot of birth trauma
Mm.
too, right? Of women giving birth and then children who then grow up to become us as adults who also experience that trauma right along with their moms. And so, like I said, that's where I was seeing people with kids who were just a few years old and were already dealing with so much trauma and anxiety and, you know, attachment issues and self-worth issues. And it was really, heartbreaking, and the parents were trying to figure out how do we deal with this, and you hear more and more people talk about that now of, their 15-month-olds who are getting diagnosed with anxiety disorders. And I mean, it's just absolutely just heartbreaking to see that. And so when I started to learn about how can we educate and inform people about these concepts, how can we teach people about things like prenatal and how to have more calm and comfortable and trauma-free birth experiences, how can we have people securely bonded and attached with their kids, with each other,
Mm.
and really those traumatic experiences that are the very earliest experiences. And so that's what I was doing with that work when I was in Germany. It's called prenatal bonding BA, bonding analysis. And basically, what we do is we help people to become more securely attached and bonded and release those past traumas and
Mm.
anxieties and fears and stressors so that they can have those comfortable experiences. And then same thing with hypnobirthing, very much helpful for that because we're educating and informing, but also teaching about trauma and anxiety release, nervous system regulation, how to stay in what I like to call the healing room versus the emergency room, to be able to be calm and have all the good hormones and endorphins and safe going on in their system so that they're not feeling like things are being done to them versus being in the process and making informed, empowered choices. When you can empower someone
Mm.
and help them feel like they're more in control, their nervous system's okay, they're safe, they're calm, they're comfortable, they've got this, they can handle this, that can prevent that trauma because most of those traumatic experiences, and you can do this in any kind of medical setting too, right? If someone has health conditions, I work with a lot of people with, chronic or acute like pain and health conditions. And there's a lot of medical trauma out there of, again, feeling like you're not in the driver's seat, not being educated and informed, not knowing how to be your own advocate and having conversations with care providers and not feeling seen and heard.
Mm.
When we can do those types of things, so that advocacy training, being assertive and feeling connected to your body and knowing that you know yourself better
Mm.
than anyone else does, and being able to exercise those choices, those rights, those types of things can help prevent that. But when we're talking about someone who's pregnant, they're not just doing that for themselves, they're doing that for their kids too,
Mm.
right? And so
Yeah.
preventing, and they can both have a less traumatic or trauma-free experience.
Mm.
And then there's not so much to unravel later.
Yeah.
And so that's really where I'm talking about that of like, how can we
Mm.
prevent those things? And how can we help people to learn about regulation
Mm.
in their nervous systems, to understand these concepts so that they can be more informed and educated about that and know tools and techniques and have resources available. And then when they're going into future
Mm.
circumstances, then they are more regulated and they have all of those tools at their disposal so that they can deal with those things and handle those things in a much more emotionally strong and resilient way
Mm.
so that they don't become those big T traumas.
Mm.
We call them,
Yeah.
like in psychology, a lot of times we talk about now little T traumas or big T traumas. You and I could literally be in the same room
Mm.
with the same circumstances, and one of us with post-traumatic stress, for example,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
And the other one might not,
Mm.
and a lot of that is it's subconsciously controlled. It's in our nervous systems. It's not in our conscious control. We don't, what our nervous system says is going to keep us safe in that
Mm.
moment, whether it's, fight or flight or freeze or whatever it's going to choose to do. And so if you feel resourced,
Mm.
if you feel more calm and confident and you feel like you have those tools at your disposal, you're going to have a much higher likelihood of coming out of things with less trauma and the effects of that.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
that's where and why I started getting into more of those things with women through pregnancy, birth, and early childhood.
Yeah.
Because if we can, even if it's unraveling in childhood, if we can do it then,
Mm.
way better outcomes when people are older.
Yeah.
Because we're always able to change. Our brains never lose that ability to change,
Mm.
no matter how old.
Mm.
Like I said, I work with people all the way into their 70s who are still dealing with some of these things, and it can be done. But how much better is it if you don't have to live the next like 40, 50 years holding on to those same things?
Yeah, definitely. Oof. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So very eye-opening there and that kind of thing with all that stuff. And I guess a lot of that then does that work into the program that you've created for people with emotions and that side of
Mhm.
things, right? Like that's helping people, further along the spectrum, I
Absolutely.
guess.
Yeah, that's helping them when they're first. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's helping them to build that reconnecting with themselves, and being able to have that strengthening of that mind body connection and really looking at, how can they master that emotional regulation? How can they set those really brave boundaries and really live in their strengths and their values? And how can they have that power of mindfulness and optimal energy? I always believe that energy management is as important, if not even more so, honestly, even in our businesses, than time management
Yes.
and really reconnecting with the real you, of what's really important because we lose ourselves so much, through the traumas and the roles and responsibilities and those pressures and expectations of society and other people and what we think we should do or shouldn't do and all of the things. And so yeah, so my program that I'm getting ready to relaunch and the individual work I also do with people is, like you said, helping them when they're maybe a little further along. And like I said, it's never too late. So no matter what stage that someone in their life, we really can do that work and make a big difference. And we can learn how to regulate. so that as we move forward in whatever comes our way, we have more resources to be able to handle it.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yes. I love that. Actually, they're having more resources to be able to handle it. What are your tips for managing energy and that kind of thing?
Mm.
I know this is a little bit outside of probably what we were going to talk about, but it's just,
Okay.
like for me, discovering that whole energy management was something that unlocked so much for me in terms of like not putting like highly stressful task after highly stressful task, like big like stuff that required my bravery and stuff that triggers my anxiety sometimes, that kind of thing. Learning that and having being able to manage that more just helps me so much in my business. Are there any tips from your perspective or things you've seen,
Mhm.
trends? That, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing that I would recommend is definitely just that foundational, fundamental self-care. And by that, I don't mean like getting our nails and bubble baths and things like that. I mean
Yeah.
literally hydrating, sleeping, eating, moving, those types of things. When you are doing as well as you can physically, when you're physically stronger, when you're taking care of yourself on those really fundamental levels and getting enough sleep and all of
Mm,
those things, then you're stronger emotionally
mm,
and
yeah.
energetically, right?
Mm,
You're going to always have more energy. When we start to really deplete ourselves, just keeps draining away.
mm,
And so one of those things is, yeah, just take care of yourself on those really basic is there, and then get to know yourself. So know when to put those really complicated or big tasks. Don't put them at a time. Let's say you are really strong in the morning and you're like, okay, I've got this, I can do this, let's go. And then after lunch, like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you have an energy dip. Do not give yourself really hard tasks at 2, 3 in the afternoon then, right? And a lot of times people don't think about that. They think, oh, I'm going to get this done, and they're so ambitious with it. And then that's the last thing they feel like doing. And so give yourself set tasks during the times that they're most appropriate for you, because everybody's going to be different. I spent years reading books, listening to coaches and gurus who said that you had to, be in the 5 o'clock club and get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and do all of these things first thing in the morning. And that is so not who I am. And I was trying to fight against my nature,
mm,
and it was not successful. And so we think that things are, a certain way, that we have to follow this advice or fit into this person's box in
mm,
order to be successful. And that's not true, and there's nothing wrong with you if that doesn't work for you. That absolutely did not work for me, for example. But I know when I work best. And
mm,
so I give myself challenging tasks at the time that I have the energy for that. And I'll give myself easier things to do when maybe I don't have as much energy. I'm somebody who needs in their day, and that's okay. And I might be able to do, stronger things in the afternoon, whereas some people are exactly the opposite. And so yourself and work with how you work best versus fighting against it all the time. To me, that's really, really, and there's actually a book on this that is a great book. It's by Daniel Pink. It's called When. So WEN. So it's all about the science of timing. And it talks about how to find
mm,
your times. You are the most energetic, that you can do more analytical tasks, or that maybe you should be a little easier on yourself and do the things that aren't as challenging for you. And so I found that fascinating. And that helped just put things into perspective for myself and really start to teach my clients to figure out how their brain works and work with it rather than at cross purposes. I always feel like if we work with our strengths,
mm.
we're going to be so much better than when we're trying to shore up our perceived weaknesses.
Mm. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's such a great point. I definitely want to check out that book too. It's interesting. I know for years, like I had the whole, they'd say, oh, do create content in the morning. That's when you're fresh and that's when certain people can do it. I found for me though, writing in the afternoons works better because I'm not overthinking it and I like get into this creative groove. Even though I am a little bit more tired, yeah, it flows easier rather
Yeah.
than in the morning I'm too analytical to like create
Mhm.
sense. So yeah, it's
Exactly. So you give yourself more of the physical tasks in the morning then and the creative things in the afternoon.
yeah.
And when you do that, it totally changes the game. Because like you said, other people will,
Yeah.
that's based on them. That's not based on you. And
Yes.
everyone's life is different too. Somebody will think, oh, I have time of day because somebody said that that's when you're
Mm,
supposed to, but maybe that isn't for their family life.
yeah.
Maybe they have too much chaos and
Mm,
kids and trying to rush to get them to school and things. That might not be the right time for them. They might need to do things when the kids are at school or when the kids go to bed, even.
mm,
And so the different life and everyone has different circadian rhythms. And you can, because people will say this, right? They'll have the objection that, well, what about people who work nights or work swing shifts and they're not naturally night people? You
yeah.
can make yourself, you can train yourself to do it. True.
Mm,
You can do that for a period of time, but if left to your own devices, you will always revert back to your natural circadian rhythm. So if we took all of that away, so yes, you
mm,
can force yourself,
mm, mm,
but aren't you going to work so much better? And you will. You'll be
mm,
productive if you don't fight against your nature and you work with it. And those of us who have businesses and have the ability
mm.
to do that, to make
Yeah.
our own schedules,
Yeah.
right? Why not make yourself the most effective and
Mm,
do it working with your body's clock? Because that is something we can't change how we're wired in that way.
yeah.
We can force ourselves to fit into a different timetable, but you're never going to be able to change it permanently.
Mm, yeah. Yes. Oh my gosh, so true. Okay, so I'd love to get back to some bravery talk as well and sort
Okay.
of look at how like you got started in your business or
Mhm.
somewhere where you like maybe had to make some brave shifts in order to get started. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I alluded to it a little bit earlier that when I chose to recover for good from burnout, that I made some big shifts in life. I also made some really big shifts in my business. When I very first got started, I actually was coaching separately from my therapy life. So I started a business when I was in graduate school for clinical psychology. I started my business, my budding business consulting and coaching with entrepreneurs to literally have flexibility and pay off all my six figures in student loans because I was basically working for free. I was paying them to work and it was accruing interest all of the time. Student loans are a big, burden, right? And so I to be able to have some flexibility so I could work around school and working in my mental health clinic and all of those things that I was doing and help other people
Mm,
and also help myself. Came from, some entrepreneurs and my family and my husband's family. And so that made sense to me. Like, okay, I'll start a business and I'll be able to do that. And I kept those two different sides of myself going side by side, but not really intersecting for many years until that about earlier, where I needed to recover physically, needed to make some shifts in my life in order to have more sustainable success. And that was the same time that I decided to start my evolution of my business now, which I called Psyched Up Success, because I wanted to put my psychology in with the success,
nice.
helping people to create their own definition of success, just like I've been talking about, right? To do that on their own terms, because the people that I was working with in their businesses, we're dealing with all the same personal stuff that everybody does. And a lot of times they get really frustrated and upset because they couldn't figure out how to get themselves to do the things they knew they needed to do in their business. Their logical, conscious mind was saying, I want this goal, I want to make this plan, I want to use this strategy, and their subconscious was not on board with that at all. And so I wanted to help them with that, and I knew how. It just wasn't my job at that moment. I would look at them and think, well, I'm not your therapist. I can't do that. And so I combined those two things together with my private practice now. And I'd always said I wanted to have my own business, my own private practice, and work more from home when I turned 40. And that was coming. It was coming that next year. So it was perfect timing. And that definitely was a big step, a big and a brave step there because I had a very successful career. And like I kind of alluded to earlier too, the more money I made, the harder I felt like I needed to work. And I was doing really great at both. And I was making a good amount. And I was working myself into the ground too, like we talked about. And so I decided to shut that down and start fresh in a way. I did have connections, but this was a whole different animal, compared to what I was doing before. And it was a big shift. And so I had to put that out there and say, this is what I'm going to do. And I want to work virtually and I want to transition out of these other pieces. And so I did. And I felt like decision I could have ever made. In the middle of changing my business in that way, we also moved on board with this. So we also sold our place, moved out of the city, and built a house out in the mountains because that was part of that big shift for me is I'm going to work virtually. And before I was working all in person, like I'm going to work virtually. I want to work from home and we're going to leave our life in the city to the middle of nowhere. It's pretty brave there for sure to just say, you know what, this is what we're going to do. And I literally did it in 90 days. So I told you I made that decision between Christmas and New Year's, and I gave myself 31st. And I said, here's what I'm like, in 90 days, we're going to move. We're going to have our other house. We're going to sell that one. We're going to start building the new one. And we're going to take this big giant leap and make these changes because I cannot drag this out anymore. We need to do it now and not look back. And like I said, it was the best decision, honestly, that I ever made. And I'm so happy that I did. And I've built a really amazing practice, a really amazing business, taking care of myself first now
Mm.
and being able to show up as my best for everyone else because I'm taking care of myself. And that is exactly the opposite of what I was trained to do. I still look now and people online and they'll say, "Oh, yeah, I back-to-back clients and I only have 10 minutes in between, but then I have to finish my notes and so I don't even have time to go to the bathroom." And I'm like,
Mm.
"Never do that again.
Yeah.
Never." It's a huge leap of faith to do that, but it's so worth it to get out of that hustle culture.
Yeah. Okay, so do you mind if I ask, what does your business look like when you're putting yourself first or looking after yourself first? I mean, obviously you've got a bit more time between calls, which I'm glad
Yes.
to hear. I kind of if I don't have half an hour between calls, yeah, that's a real
Me
problem for
too.
me. So,
Mhm.
yeah. What else do you do? I imagine there's the self-care stuff that you mentioned, but is there, yeah, what else do you do? Or are there times where you have to say no, maybe? I'd love to hear more about that.
Definitely. I have to say no more. But yeah, I do the same thing with Asian. So now I make sure in my calendar, I don't book myself and nobody else is allowed to book me where I at least 30 minutes in between. Right. I want to make sure that I have time between everyone to shift and to be able to replenish my energy. So if I need to eat, if I need to hydrate, if I need to get up and stretch and move or go outside, use the restroom, all of those things that happens, right? I have time for this. And so I don't have to override and push through. That's kind of the key. That's my big red flag, as I mentioned earlier, is do I feel like I'm pushing through? And so when I'm asked to do something, so if being asked, would you like to take advantage? Would you like to add this into your schedule?
Mm,
I really sit with it now. I don't make really rash decisions, really
mm,
quick decisions.
yeah,
I will take time with it
mm,
and I will sit with it and see, does it feel like pushing through to me? And if it does, I say no.
mm,
And if I feel like, okay, I have the energy, I have the space for that, and I can still do all the things to take care of myself, then I do that. I also now do some preventative things where, I do things like yoga, I get massages regularly, I get into nature more because for me that's really replenishing. And that's one of the reasons why we moved here because I have mountains all the way around me and I love it. So I don't have to go far in order to do that now, which is beautiful. But those types of things, if I start to feel like I'm rushing or adding too much in, then I have to reevaluate and reset that. But mostly it looks like just spreading things out, having those breaks, making sure I get some days off and some time off. And then being able to travel is important to me, to have that flexibility to go places and I love, things like food and music and culture. And so making sure that I'm feeding that part of myself as well. I also love to read. And one of the things that I wasn't doing before, so that whole time frame where I was reevaluating, somebody asked me a question and I knew there was a problem when I didn't have a good answer for it, which was what brings you joy?
mm,
And so they asked me, what brings you joy? And I could tell them, but I wasn't doing any of them. And think really far back to remember when I was doing those, right? So I started reconnecting with things I loved. I started doing things like swimming and dancing, which were things that I always had loved to do. And I had gotten so focused because of school and the kind of career that I have. It's very reading intensive, we'll call
mm,
it that. I remember in grad school, we had like 1,000 pages a week. It was ridiculous. There was no way to do any of it, right? But I got so burnt out on reading, I had stopped
mm,
reading anything enjoyable. It was all work.
mm,
And so doing things like that again. I make sure that I read for pleasure, do things that I like to do, not just things that I feel like I have to do or I need to do. And I think that to me is putting myself first too, is, what, I try to schedule those things before the work.
mm,
And then I can fit the work in and around all the things that I get to do.
mm. Nice. Oof. Oh, so much goodness there. I'm taking so many notes. I mean, a lot of these things I've done, but then when I've had opportunities or things like that, it's like, oh, speaking opportunity, a summit or something, and then I've said yes, and it's just like slowly the load gets a bit more, and then like I care for my mother, and so her health things start going at the same time as my load increases, and yeah, it's just it sort of sometimes sneaks up on me, but yeah, those are some great tips.
Yeah.
So,
I do the same with my mom, so I completely understand that. And sometimes that, things do need to shift a little bit, right? Those priorities do shift. And that's where I think a lot of people try to put so much pressure on themselves to make everything so even and balanced all the time. Whereas I like to talk more about harmony because sometimes it is going to be more about you and you need to take care of yourself. And sometimes it's going to be about your family and your mom and needing to prioritize that. And then sometimes you have something big going on for your business, and that's okay. The important thing is that it all flows together in a way that works best for you in the end. I always use the example that your life should be kind of like your favorite song, right? There's different parts and players and instruments that go into creating your favorite song. And sometimes there's a vocal solo. And sometimes there's a drum solo or a piano or I don't know, a
Yeah.
cello or a guitar or whatever it is. Everybody has different parts and pieces in their life. But the majority of the time, you want them to be in harmony and kind of flowing together. It's
Mm.
not disjointed, where you
Yeah.
feel guilty because you're over here when you wish you were over here, or you're on your phone all the time, you're with your family, find a way for things to flow better, where then there isn't that guilt or it doesn't feel like you're dropping the ball when life happens and you have to put your attention
Mm.
on something that comes up, like something with your health or a family member's health. That's the best thing. And one of the other things that I've done to help with that is delegate the things that I don't have to do.
Mm.
Because I before was trying to put it all on me and do all the things and be all the things to all the people all the time. And there's just not enough energy or time in the day for that. And so for me and my business especially, if I can pass something on to someone else because it's not being with my people and showing up the way I need to show up, then I try to do it. If not, it's not that important.
Mm.
If I'm quiet on social media for a while because I'm really busy doing something else, I can either give it to someone or it's okay.
Mm.
And I just release that pressure and just say, you know what, right now, I need to take care of this, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And I think that makes a huge difference than trying to say, well, I have to do this and I have to make sure I get that done and this done.
Mm.
It's just not sustainable for us that we have to do everything all the time for everybody. But when your attention is called to something important,
Mm.
it's okay if things are quiet in other areas. It will still be there when you come back.
Oh, oh my gosh, I love that. That's such a powerful shift and reframing. I love that. So I'd love to ask now, like, what brave things do you have coming up in the next 3 to 6 months-ish or thereabouts? Yeah.
Yeah. So that course that's
Mm.
really excited about. So that is going to launch in the next month or two, actually. So that's really exciting. So that will is in the works. I'm revamping and like I said, the content's amazing. Just creating new videos that are more modern of me now after, building all of my confidence on camera and all of that. So that's wonderful. I'm really excited. And honestly, because putting that out there again after so long, right? It's fresh and new, but I am making sure to get a lot of support and help with the promotion and creation and things like that. So that's helpful. And then I will be finishing some of those certifications that I started last year. So, I'm working on my case studies. Psychology, we're all about case studies. So I'm finishing those up in the next 6 months for that prenatal bonding program. So I'll be fully, as well as I am doing a pre and perinatal educator certification program that will be done in the next 6 months. And so really spreading some of these messages and teaching other people about these concepts that we talked about how do you prevent these things? How do you have some early intervention techniques and teaching people how important it is to realize how those early experiences shaped us as adults and what we can do to break those generational cycles. Because like you said, those things are passed down. Exactly how we were raised. A lot of people in our generation know that that's not how they want to do.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
again, they don't know instead.
Mm.
They know that that isn't because we have heightened awareness around things like trauma, right? Because that wasn't a word when we were younger.
Mm.
But now they understand that and they recognize that and they want to make those changes. So that's something in the next 6 months, just getting the information out there more about those concepts and empowering people to make the changes in their own lives and to be a model for others and for that next generation. So those are definitely big, brave things that I'm working on too, because, that's not, especially in, because there's certain countries where those conversations are more prevalent. And in the US here, Nobody talks about those things. And so I want to get those more into my community, but also just into the world. So doing things like this, just us talking about it today is part of that mission for sure.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so much goodness that you have coming up. And oh man, thank you for all that you have shared on this podcast. It's amazing. If you had any last words that you wanted to leave us with, or especially for anyone who maybe, like wants to work but maybe not work themselves into the ground, or any of those things. Sorry, that's leaving it very wide and vague, but feel free to jump in with last words you'd like to
Okay.
leave us with. Sorry.
Yeah. I'll give one tip. I'll leave a technique for everybody of a way to just slow down, even just for 1 minute. It doesn't have to take very long. That's what I want to leave everyone with is that you don't have to swing the pendulum all the way one way or the other. So it doesn't have to be, I get everything done or I get nothing done. And often that's what we think,
Mm,
right? In our societies, that's what we're taught is either you're do all the things, hustle culture, or you do nothing
mm,
and you rest and you're lazy. That's my least favorite four-letter word, by the way, is
yeah.
lazy, because that's a lot of judgment on ourselves. And so even if you just take 1 minute
Mm,
to breathe, just take a few mindful breaths and just check in with yourself. How are you feeling? What are you noticing or experiencing in your body? Do you need to eat? Do you need to get up and stretch? Do you need to get a drink of water? Do you feel some tension, tightness, or stress in your body? And then take a few more of those breaths. Just feel that air moving in and release the tension coming out. And then give yourself whatever it is you need in that moment. Just literally something small like that that takes 5 minutes or less out of your day can make the biggest difference in just replenishing your energy, checking in with yourself, getting more connected, and can help you to tap into, what can help you to prevent that burnout or recover from that. It's when we don't do that, we don't breathe all day long. We just kind of go through life and it just keeps flying by us,
mm,
right? Like if you take 1 minute for yourself, you're not being unproductive, you're not being lazy, you just are taking care of yourself. I promise you that when you get back to work, you're going to be so much more productive. You're going to get way better results just for having taken that small break for you. So start small and get the support. Don't feel like you have to do it all by yourself because you don't. And there is that support available. And it doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. It doesn't mean you're broken, anything like that. It just means that you're human and it means that you want to do things differently so that
mm.
you can get those better results.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so take a moment for yourself every so often, at least once a day, and then get the support that you deserve.
Mm. Oof. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. I love that so much, and definitely some great things that I'll be taking from this episode just going forward. So this is very timely for me. Thank you so much.
Good.
And yeah, of course, we will have links to all of your stuff in the show notes. But for people who are like me, who are like, I'm not going to go to the show notes, I just want to go to Instagram or wherever right now, where is the best place for someone to get in touch with you or follow or, yeah.
So, my business up success. So if they go to psychedsuccess.com, they can book a call with me. They can learn a lot more about what I do. They can see all the things, all my programs and my books and all of that, or on Instagram or YouTube as well. So Psyched Up Success. Same thing with Facebook. I'm kind of all over the place. So if you want to search for me and you look up Psyched Up Success, you're going to find me on all the different platforms. Feel free to reach out and check out what I'm doing. I would love to hear from you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jodie. I've really appreciated all of your time and all of your amazing stories today.
Thank you for having me, Tiffany.
If you're a new coach who's ready to finally sign your first two high-ticket clients, but you're stuck wondering what you're missing, then the Brave Coach Breakthrough is for you. It's my 3-month one-on-one coaching program where we blend strategy and mindset to help you confidently sign clients without feeling salesy. Spots are limited. Book your free strategy call now to see if this is the right fit for you. Come over to tiffanygstudios.com, TIFFANY G for golf, STUDIOS.com, or find me over on Instagram at Tiffany G Studios and DM me the word breakthrough to get a link to book your call. Let's get you paid to coach and change lives. Thanks for listening to the Business Bravery podcast. Has this episode inspired you to do something brave? Even if it's only send a difficult email, please share it with me on Instagram or other social media channels. Feel free to tag me at Tiffany G Studios. That's TIFFANY G for golf, STUDIOS, no spaces, no underscores, etc. Or you can use the hashtag Business Bravery Podcast so that I can cheer you on and together we can inspire other coaches and course creators to do brave things in their business and life. Now, I'm Tiffany and I'll leave you with this one last thing. What's one brave thing you're going to do today? It doesn't have to be big. Even the smallest steps can create the most massive results. So again, feel free to share it with me either publicly or privately so that I can cheer you on. That's it from me. Until next time, bye for now.